I'm sure you guys all know what it's like to have somebody who's listed on the registry. Each of our panelists comes, like you said, from a different aspect in regards to what the families are going through. We wanted to have different perspectives because each of us represent a different challenge. So somebody who is possibly a child of a registrant is going to experience a different aspect than a spouse. So we wanted to really hit on each of the different aspects so that way we can probably even connect with you in a way that only a wife or a husband or a spouse, a parent or a child is experiencing. And so these are the different aspects. And then having someone like Joellen can really talk about some of those challenges and how she helps with each of us deal with some of the challenges that we experience as family members. At the end, we will open it up to Q&A, so please know that we definitely want to hear whatever you guys have to say at the end. Mark, I know that you have a challenge having a son who is on the registry. You've also experienced the fact that your son say the same name.
Yes, that's what happens when you're having children and you think, I'm so proud, I'm the proud dad, I'm going to name my son right after myself. That's all wonderful and that's great until something like this happens. And you wake up one morning and the FBI and the authorities are knocking down your front door. And you're in disbelief. And you think it can't be true, it can't be right. But as you find out what is a 290 and what is this system, you end up almost absorbing what has happened in your home. My son is the registrant, but because of my name, that's the name that went in the newspaper. So people I've known for 30 years in a grocery store would push carts into me, call me names, phone calls all night long. Things that you wouldn't expect from someone you've known that well, but then family. It happens with the family where the first Thanksgiving where everybody gets together. With a registrant, the PO has a say in who comes to your home. So now you have the responsibility to keep your family abreast of all those private things that you don't want anybody to know. And you want to defend your family. You want to defend your son because you've known them their whole life and they made a mistake. But the hard truth is the media gets a hold of things and the mistruths that come aboard and the things that happen. I went through this notebook 8 times, and every time I did it got bigger and longer and the rabbit trails got farther and farther. But the truth is, you have to knuckle down and you got to hold on because it affects your mother, your father, your grandmother, your grandfather, your nieces, your nephews, your grandchildren. It affects everybody in your family. There's nothing that happens anymore just private. The next door neighbors, the Facebook, the business, everything becomes a target for what was on the news, not what was true. And people a lot of times don't want to know what's true. They want you to justify what they saw on the 6 o'clock news. And it's usually something that your son's holding the baby and they're on vacation and it's a beautiful picture. And then the caption goes along with what somebody has made up. But we've run across family dinners that we couldn't go to, or we chose not to go to because we had to either choose dinner with our son, who has just got out of prison, or we go to the extended family without our son because there's an underage person or a neighbor that's been invited. That's a crazy thing. We just ran through the same thing with great grandma, 96 years old. And Mark could not travel to see her because it's out of his city limits, or it's out of his territory limits. And the PO made the decision that she's not going to let him go on vacation because he's a monster. What an awful thing to hear. I was just in Vicky's class over there in the Women Against Registry about pride in there, because it's people like us, like you, like me, that are in the same situation. And I think we're made to feel that we're alone, but we're not. We're not alone. Travel was a really, really big thing. Social media that we take for granted nowadays can't be in our homes, because I'm responsible for keeping my son out of jail. Because if he comes in my home and we're sitting and we're doing something, I put him at risk. And anybody that has a person in this situation has to be, you almost have to adopt the thing for yourself, because out of protection. I have to make sure I don't mess up and cause something for my son to be rearrested for. So I have to know all of the things. That means no smart television, which is almost all of them. No smartphones, which you can't even buy a dumb phone anymore. No security cameras. You can't have security cameras. So you have protection situations where I'm blessed enough to live in the end of a street all by myself. You don't go past me. I'm the end. So at least I have that. It's a thing that doesn't look like it has an end, but it does. I see, without Axel, we didn't know what to do. I've learned more in the last maybe 3.5 years about people helping us that don't know us. I've got more support from you guys, from people, from Axel, from Kathleen, than I've had from people I've known for 30, 40 years. And it keeps you going. It keeps you standing up. There's not a good thing to say about the court system. I try to tame my comments, but had I known it was the way it was, it's nothing you learn in school. Nothing that happens in the legal system is what you see on TV. It's all the unwritten things and the surprises. So that caused me a lot of depression, which I pass on to my family, which I try not to, but had we not had our grandchildren, we were blessed with our grandchildren for 4 years, 5 years. And until they went to school, that's when the next thing happened, is our grandchildren are being taken out of their classrooms by the teachers and the principal, people that know of my family situation, and they're being interrogated when there was nothing to do with them. But they're being treated in the same way. And it skewed my faith a little bit. And I know I'm not the only one. But things like the mandatory neighbor notifications and things, there's nothing good with any of that. And I know I'm not alone. Everybody I talk to is my same story, just a different version of it. So I could talk for hours on all the craziness. But the day that he got out of prison was a happy day for me, because he came home. And whatever we have to go through, we're going to go through. It doesn't matter. He's still my son, and I'm still proud of him. I think to do it over, I want to name him my name. And that's awful to say. But what if I'd have made a mistake and I'd have hung this on him? I see his depression. And his depression is because of what he's done to his family. And I don't see it that way, but I can't do anything about it. I just have to support him and love him. But this is the first time I've been in front of people for 6 years, because I hide. After you've been raided a couple of times, loud noises, lots of people. I head for the background. And I think what this group has taught me is that's not where you can help. You can't help back there. So all I can do is reach out and try to tell everybody else that they're not alone. It's we all have a story, and if we listen to each other's story, don't have to have the details. Nobody sometimes wants to know the details, but the situations are real helpful. Who do you call if you have a problem? We didn't know. We're learning that. How do you fix a problem? How do you find out a problem? We're truly blessed to be in this situation. I'm just a tiny little fraction, but it has been an incredible upheaval in my life. Like I say, I could go on over and over, but this you don't need to hear all the details. But I thank you all for coming and sitting
Charles, you are married to a formally registered citizen.
Yes.
So I know that he's very happy and free from that. You guys have been together for over 30 years.
Going on 30.
December 30 this year, December.
Yeah, so why don't you share with us some of the challenges that you've had dealing with having a spouse on the registry?
Okay, yes. Like you said, we've been together 30 years, and 27 of those years he's been registrant. And we've been through a lot, as far as family, and it's always been just us that knew. And I'm just really nervous, so bear with me. But one of the first things that we dealt with together was, in our 40s and 50s, we were looking towards retirement and we wanted a place to retire. And we were stuck in our house. We've been in there for 25 years and we weren't able to move because you couldn't live by schools, you couldn't live by parks, you couldn't live, and so we didn't know what to do. And I told Mike, I said, we're getting older and our neighborhood is changing. And, if we're going to be old here, how are we going to protect ourselves and stuff? So even before we started thinking about that, there was my own dealing with how I was going to handle the situation with Mike being on the registry. And I used to have a lot of doubt and mistrust and fear, and I always had my guard up. And I started thinking, why do I need to feel this way? I've known him now for so long. I have no evidence that he is that kind of a person. And it was something that I was dealing with by myself. And finally I just said, I gotta let this go. I do trust him. There was no reason for me to believe that he would ever reoffend or anything. And finally I just said, complete trust. And that took me 15 years to just let my guard down, and it was hard, it was very stressful. Finally it's relief to just let that go, put your trust in, and we always trusted each other, we were always open with each other. So it felt really good to finally let that go. And then now we're faced with wanting to move, and we couldn't move. So we were really stuck. We just really didn't know what to do. So Mike did try to get off the registry, which he failed at. And then, I don't know if you were here in the last session, but he was going over the time where we had a family gathering and all my family would come up, and we went to the state fair and we were all meeting at the front gate, and my sisters came and said they pulled Mona over and they told her that her car belongs to a sexual predator. And so I have my brothers, and their grandchildren, everybody there. So this car we had just recently sold it to my sister. So we had to deal with it head on at that time. And so we said, okay, we're just gonna have to, this is enough, this was going on more than 20 years. And we didn't want the family to know, or at least I didn't. So we started the process of what we're gonna do. And we found a way, and we had to explain to now just lay everything out of the line, because in our family there's secrets that are no secrets. Everybody knows everything about ourselves and our family, my family. And so we decided to talk to them and work with them, and they were supportive, which was very surprising to me. And they helped us, and they were completely willing to do whatever Mike needed to help him, to get off the registry. And so there were some members of my family that were, unwilling, and some were. And then there was a sister that reached out to me. And she was more concerned. If I had known that Mike was a registrant, and I said, yes, I've known since day one. Mike told me and everything, but we still worked it out. And she said, okay, that's all. That's all I wanted to know. And so we started the process of working to get him off the registry, and we were successful. And just the first thing, I think within 6 months, we bought a new house and we moved. And we feel comfortable, at least we could stay there until we retire, or until we die, I guess. But it is, like someone said earlier, a roller coaster. It's very hard, especially when you're dealing within yourself. We never knew each other. We didn't have the same friends. We didn't go in the same circles. So the day we met, we've been together ever since, but we never really knew the background of each other. We didn't grow up in the same town. So it took a lot of years for me to finally say, yes, I do trust him. I have no doubts. Like, let my guard down. It's tiring. It was tiring for me. And so now we're doing so much better. It feels so much better that Mike's not a registrant. And I guess we're just gonna have to start helping more people to try and get off the registry and lobbying. And I guess we're in it now for the long term. So that's all I have to say.
Joellen, as a therapist, I'm sure that you've had families come to you and talk to you about the fears and the feelings that come with the stigma of dealing with having a loved one on the registry. Can you please talk to us about that?
Sure. I think in situations like this, you find out who your friends are really are. I think one of the things I talk about in my groups is, these are offender groups. What did you think of sex offenders before you got them? And they all buy into the stereotypes and the mythology, because that's what the press, the media, drives us that way. And the legislators do the same things. Somebody referred to it earlier in another panel as a moral panic, and that's exactly what it is. So the stigma is real. It's real for the offender, and it's real for the family members, and even friends. People will say, I've been asked, how can you work with these people? And my answer is, they're people. They made a mistake. They're human beings. Would you like, one thing Jax has said numerous times is, how would you like to be remembered for the worst thing you ever did? It's an event. It's not or sometimes it's an ongoing event, but it's not the sum total of who the person is. And in my very profession, the bottom line is people can change. People can change. So, there are no sex offenders, really. There are people who have committed sex offenses.
How many of you dealt with CPS?
Child Protective Services.
Only indirect.
I know myself, I was harassed by them a few times. Can you talk to us about how to deal with them whenever you have another visit or haven't had one but will be experiencing one?
Well, you really have no choice but to cooperate as best you can. Because they will take those children away if they think that there's a risk of harm. Or more often what happens is the registrant has to leave the home while they do their investigation and you jump through their hoops. Typically, it takes about 18 months. If they decide that the kids are at risk, the parents have to do parenting, they have to do, the sex offender has to do treatment, which they're usually in anyway. And they want family sessions, and then they observe, and there's numerous court hearings, and it's very stressful. And the kids are deprived of one of their parents quite a lot. So it's very taxing emotionally, but I had one client who managed to avoid all of this because his wife had dual citizenship, and he shipped the family off to Germany. And they're still there, even though he's done with his probation and everything, for fear that were they to come back, DCFS would get involved again.
How would you deal with a family reunification?
I actually have a protocol that I put into place at my clinic a few years ago when I was dealing with parolees, because at the time, parole's default was no contact with your family, no contact with your children. So I developed a protocol. One of the things that my clients work on are treatment targets, and the pertinent treatment targets to be eligible to do family reunification would be, there's a test that looks at their empathy levels in regards to child sexual abuse. We do that. We want them to make gains in social skills, in interpersonal relationships, working on their coping skills, anger, anxiety, and assertiveness training, so that they have healthy interactions with family. If there were personal sexual difficulties between a husband and wife, we want those to be addressed in treatment so that that's not ongoing. And then we want a monitor to be assigned to begin with, and they will sign a document saying, I will be responsible in monitoring the visitation between parolee X and the children. I will not leave the parolee alone with the children during the entire time of visitation. I'm aware of his or her sex offense, and I understand the importance I have in this process. And this is, DCFS will make there be a monitor. That's part of their process, and it was also part of paroles. And also working with the child victim and their therapist, if there is one, to make sure that they have a sense of self and identity so that they can protect themselves from anything that's inappropriate. And we want, in these cases, we want to avoid even the appearance of wrongdoing, because even the slightest thing that a registrant does wrong can land them back in jail. And that's the last thing we want to have happen.
I know last year one of the questions that I had a family member ask is they're dealing with little kids. Their father committed the offense before they were born. And so when you're talking about kids, whether it be grandkids or personal kids or nieces, nephews, that they start seeing differences and they start asking questions. When do you think how and when is the right time to talk to the kids?
I think you have to do it at an age-appropriate level. I think you don't want it to be a secret that you spring on them when they're 18. You want, as kids are asking about sexual things, you want to respond in a way that's developmentally appropriate and that you're comfortable with. I mean, I think I have worked with families on this issue. We say, when do we tell them? Well, a little bit at a time. you know? Maybe when they hit puberty is when you sit down and talk the whole thing out. But, you know, it's enough to know that, you know, mom or dad made a mistake. And there are certain things they have to do because they made a mistake, just like you have to go in timeout when you make a mistake. And just, you know, help them to learn. But be realistic and don't, I don't think you want to hide it, certainly. I think just as time goes on, you know, more and more will come up. I think it can be a natural process.
Do you guys have questions for our panel?
PTSD, TBI, when you have other issues besides the sex offender registry, like he will be on probation for his life. I haven't had any good counseling. I've gone to counselors and had, I guess, one military person was better than other people. And they always say, leave your husband. And they're not understanding. I had one, he was in the military, and he said, do your activities, you know, positive things, do what you can do. The only negative thing he said is don't try to change things you can't change, but I'm going to try to change them. But you know, that means no advocacy, so I didn't agree with that. But yeah, my husband has PTSD, TBI, he was shot here through his neck, part of his, but I can't think of the name of it, was injured. He had shrapnel in his carotid artery was what I couldn't think of. He has shrapnel in his body, so he has to deal with that. And then he has to do with the registry. There are just so many things to deal with because he was in Vietnam.
Yeah, and you make a good point. I mean, all too often, I think spouses are told. I had one family where they came in to do a compliance check. The registration people were there, and this woman who was running it at the time, the wife decided and said, "Why are you with him? You know he's going to do it again." Took the kids aside, you know, and interviewed them. You know, and it is traumatic. The whole system is traumatic to everybody. So there certainly is trauma, and I'm sorry those are the experiences you've had with therapists. I'm afraid all too often the people who do my kind of work don't see it as therapy. They don't see it as, you know, helping a human being overcome emotional challenges and become a better person. They see it as containment, you know. Sex offender treatment is somehow for them different than psychotherapy. It's not for me. It's why I love being in this
terrible.
field.
My husband has to do sex offender treatment the rest of his life. He's still going once a month. They don't understand his injury. They don't understand what PTSD, and then why he's got secondary PTSD. And they just, they're worse than
Is he permitted to choose his own therapist?
No. And they contract, it's money. They contact this team. This team reports to probation. The longer you stay on it, the more money they get. You know, it's a system when really.
Have you tried DA services?
Pardon?
Have you tried DA
Yes,
services?
they said because he's state, they maybe could help federal. He went to VA for, they have a group for PTSD. He's gone to it for years. Right now, he leads a group. And this is some religion. It's spiritual. It's spiritual. Some religion, and that helps him. He's told all the other vets about his condition, about what he did. You know, it's not something on the internet. And he has cops in his group, and they're veterans, and they understand a little bit better, and they're sorry for how badly they treated other sex offenders. But therapists, yeah, it's just telling you how terrible even therapists therapists are. There's no place to go for help really because the media has made this such a traumatic thing.
Did I see him?
You have to go that way. Just to share, I guess, my experience, but mine is similar to hers. Is the treatment place I go to is a revolving door of staff. They come in for a few months and they're gone to a better gig. Many of them have actually resigned in protest of what the treatment. I use that with very small lettering. What they're doing is damaging. So they resign and they've written letters like this is not therapy, this is not treatment. And I keep thinking, the words that we use, and we've talked about this in all the groups, the diction that we use. I stay away from the SO word, I stay away from treatment word. It's the containment model. And so when I go there for my treatment, I'll call that, I kind of expect a diagnosis. Like every other place I go to, I'm treated for something. I have a cavity, I get treated for the cavity. So I go for treatment. I don't have a diagnosis. I've been cleared by 3 psychologists to be a normal human guy. Not a threat to anybody, but yet I'm subject to this beratement of treatment. And what gets me is that these are PhD level people. They're intelligent. But if anybody's got mental issues, it's them.
Yes.
And my treatment,
I hear you.
and my treatment really needs to feel better about myself.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's right.
My treatment needs to how I find housing, like in a month, seriously, or a job.
Yes.
I need to be integrated. I need to be connected to a community. You want me to not reoffend? I'm not going to, but get me connected with a community. But when we go, it's they say, well, we want to work on your social skills. Since when did I have a deficit in that?
Right.
Well,
I have one now.
unfortunately, the state dictates the areas that we need to address in treatment. And at the beginning of this year, they came out with a document that we have to sign off that all of these criteria are met before we can discharge anybody from treatment. So it's not up to the provider. I mean, but by and large, in my program at least, the treatment targets, including things like social skills, the guys do, and they say that they benefited from it because it fosters introspection. It helps us take a look at the circumstances under which the offense was committed, and so what was going on in your life, what was going wrong, why did you choose these behaviors, and it can be very, it can really foster growth.
True, yeah, I don't discount that.
Yeah.
And the whole therapy thing is it's an intimate, professional relationship
Absolutely.
based on a whole bunch of trust.
Yeah, therapeutic alliance is the bottom line indicator for successful therapy in
So-
all realms.
So if I'm going to go trust somebody who's getting paid by the federal government, I have my own therapist, I pay and she's got my back. So I go there to help me with my anxiety and depression. But when I go to when I'm supposed to go to, how's everything? Great. What are you doing for stress? Oh, I go for a run every day or go to the gym. But I can't because it's going to be right. It's going to pull me right back into the trap. But I go through all these emotions every month. It's tough.
I'm sorry.
I'm just giving you my experience.
Yeah, no, I understand. I hear it. I've had people transfer into my program from other programs.
Because I've had therapists in this group that were really good. Like, one guy, I want you to, always come in, I want you to hear, 2 things that you like about you. And 2 things you're going to do next week to help the world, or to help yourself, okay? If you like to do this, make sure you go play golf at least once this next week. Really great guy, he didn't last.
Yeah, I had to resign from a program at one point because I totally disagreed with their philosophy and I wasn't going to compromise my principles. So.
I had a 290, and when I was fighting my case, the officer who arrested me sent me a letter that put me on a list of child abusers. I don't even have kids, where the hell did that come from? So I guess since I'm on this list, I can't have children, or I can't adopt kids. You know what? the
As
hell?
a 290, it would probably be very difficult for you to adopt, but you could have your own biological
I
children.
just don't know how the hell I got on some list, you know, like that. I don't know if anybody
Is
else.
this the
is
Megan's
gonna-
Law list? or
No,
something?
it's a special list of child abusers registered in California.
Well, the 290s put you automatically on registration.
Whether or not
So,
you
depends on what you're
for-
charged.
but this is something called child abuse.
There's a separate list that I think is at the federal level for people who they believe are a danger to children, and you don't have to be convicted to get on that list.
Right, so
Yeah.
It's like pornography, it could be streaking, it could be urination in public, it can be any of that. And if, depending on how you go through the court system, you are automatically put on the 290, which is meaning you're gonna have to register, is that not correct?
Yeah, but I'm talking about
I'm
this.
saying
There's
this-
another list.
This child abuse list is not 290 related.
Right.
It's saying I am a child abuser. I'm on a list of child abusers. Not concerning 290, not concerning Megan's Law. They put me on this list even before I was convicted. Okay? I just don't know where the hell that came from. And then my treatment, the leader of the treatment, the psychologist, she and my probation officer agreed that I should take this medication to chemically castrate myself. You know, who the hell are you? You're not a doctor, you know? And they were all for it. My probation officer said, "Oh, that's a great idea." It's just insanity. It's just insanity.
Is there any, so as you interact with your loved one on the registry or client, is there anything they do that they might think is helpful or approach they take that you actually can't stand that you wish they wouldn't do? Like, ringing a bell with Mark, you have to go through your son's list of conditions to make sure you don't put him in a situation. And that for me was the thing. I didn't want to tell my parents what my conditions were because it bothered me tremendously when they would noodle them or be like, "Hey, can you do that?" Because they're thinking of that. And of course, they're just trying to watch out for me, but I think that I'm putting them through something. So I wouldn't tell them that. And, and I wouldn't give them any updates or anything. I realized that wasn't very helpful because that was keeping them in arm's length or whatever. Does this question make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
it absolutely makes
like,
sense.
what do you wish they wouldn't do? They're doing it. It's not helpful.
Well, isolating. Yeah, that's certainly a big one. Kind of shutting down emotionally because it's too painful to let themselves feel what is really going on. Shame is just enormous. And I try to help my clients, differentiate between appropriate guilt and shame. Shame is you're a bad person. You're not a bad person. You made a mistake. You've taken responsibility, and let's help you move forward in your life and not feel like you're a bad person because you made a mistake. But this gets back to the stigma. All of that is reinforcing this stereotype and mythology that all sex offenders are going to reoffend and there's nothing you can do to change. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. But yeah, isolation I think is a major factor in many clients' lives.
I have a question for the gentleman with the son. So you're saying when your son came and he was living with you, so one of the restrictions was you cannot have a security camera at your house?
That was told to us by the parole officer when they showed up, because what was said was they don't want to be recorded if they say something wrong. So it was protection for the parole system, not for us. It didn't matter if we were being threatened or anything, but they wanted to make sure that they weren't caught
They
saying
actually told
something.
you that? They actually told you that?
Yes, 2 of them did. We have cameras up. but we were told we couldn't.
So if they're doing their job appropriately, there should be no worries.
That's
Right.
right.
But they're worried.
Yeah. It's like these cameras all that they wear around, you know, like police officers. I don't know how, but magically they get turned off sometimes.
Whenever there's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a situation that nobody's perfect, and I'm sure that they're trying to be safe so that they don't get hauled into court all the time. But you got to wonder exactly what you're thinking. That there's a reason we have cameras up too. Had I known anything about the court system before all this happened, I wouldn't have been so blindsided. But I got the 60-year-old, this is what court, and the right is always comes out right, and innocent till proven guilty. Well, not on this situation. If somebody says you did it, then you did it.
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible to get off of that because people have already made that decision. And it's,
Don't you have a right to protect yourself?
Okay, wait a
Do something
minute. I am his wife.
I'm sorry, I've
And
never seen
I
it
want to
before.
comment on this whole thing. We have signs in our front, on our house. The property has our house and my son's house on it, and he lives in a completely different house. Our signs say monitor, we have cameras. Business, we've got some neighbor issues. Okay, my constitutional rights were violated because they said we could not have cameras
To protect them.
to protect us. There's no cameras on his house. When they never asked us to take down the cameras, they just asked if we had cameras.
They just told us we couldn't have them.
And then they told us we couldn't have them, and I said that they are up there. And it never got approached again with them.
You have to
But
know.
that's against our constitutional rights, and I will stand on that.
But you
Yeah,
have
and we have guys in our
you have to
house.
know what the rules really are. And if you're told something, you gotta research it. What?
If it's not on your terms and conditions, if the registrant has signed, and they just come out willy-nilly every week and make
Yep.
up new rules, those aren't rules. They
Exactly.
can't violate you on them, and if they want them, you guys need to go to court and add them.
You have to go back to the judge and you gotta be willing to do it. And unfortunately my son, which I've been there, he gets threatened all the time. Well, if you don't do it, I'll put you back in jail.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything wrong. I'll find something. And he lives under that. Now that he's in our home or on our property, we watch out for him. And he feels like he's watching out for us, but you have to do your work. And I don't know what to do. I call Kathleen. I say, what do I do? Who do I call? And we all have to have a Kathleen. We have to have somebody to call. Call your mother. Call somebody. But don't just take it for granted. There's somebody that will know the answer.
Janice is a great resource.
Janice is fabulous. She's awesome. She sometimes tells it like it is, and sometimes she's not. She doesn't say what you want, but she tells you the truth. And the truth is what you need to hear, and that's what we all need to hear. But it can be twisted and it can be bent.
Just to add to what you're saying, there was a case in Long Beach about 6 years ago. A young man was accused of rape, went to prison for 5 years. The girl came clean and recanted and said it was all lied up.
Yep.
So we have to be innocent until proven otherwise, beyond doubt, a reasonable doubt. And that's just the way our new society works. And you don't get to pick and choose where you apply that. And we have to be okay with that. Some people will get away with things, and some people won't. We have to protect the innocent. And even if you're guilty at some point, we have to figure out who's worthy of other things.
I wish I would have done half the things I did in my life, but that doesn't make them right or wrong at this point. It just is something that you learned from. But we need to look at our politicians, and we need to study what are they about. And we need to write letters. I didn't think any of that ever worked. You know, who's gonna read my letters? I'm just some guy from Wisconsin who nobody knows. But that does make a difference. Every time they went to Sacramento, and I think they got 11 letters over this one issue. And the representative said, we've never got that many. I'm thinking, 11? Are you kidding me? Because people don't know to do it. They don't know the avenues.
Well, if anybody has not signed up for, Janice has texting on her website. I get all the alerts, and it's beautiful. You get the support group alerts, you get the letter alerts. So sign up for them.
We also have an email alert as well. We offer the texting for those who don't have email or can't get email.
How do you go about, you said you couldn't have a smartphone either, so how is your family working through? I mean,
That's
you're paying bills?
my son is using a flip phone that's, I think, 10 years old. It's a 4G network phone, and it drops out all the time because there's no 4G stuff anymore. Well, the PO calls him and he's talking to her and it'll drop out. So then he'll call her back and it'll drop out. So he texts her and said, this phone that you're making me use doesn't work. Text me, send me it in writing. She won't do it. She won't communicate where there's a history.
What about your family? Don't you still have to have a computer in your house and stuff to do your bills?
I have to take my phone and I have to have an access code on it that he doesn't have to prove that he can't access my telephone or my computer to use the internet, because that's part of life now. But the new televisions all get Netflix, and you can't buy a TV that doesn't do that anymore. And
So do you guys have TV?
we have a TV in our home, but he just got one after 6 months, and I had to put an access code on anything that is Bluetoothed, so that he can at least have television. But he can't have Facebook. He can't have any social media at all. And in this generation, that's life. That's business.
That's actually a violation of his rights because he is able, and enforcing even ruled of the fact that they can't prevent him from having social media.
Right, now he is in a situation with the business, I've kept his business going while he was gone, and he's back. But he's in a situation now that if he allows the courts to access his books, now he's committing a felony for allowing a third person to see financial information from customers. So, so now how do you provide the court with what they want, protect yourself? We haven't figured that one out yet. But how do you, because taxes, you got to pay taxes, you got to have your paperwork in order, but you can't turn it over. The software doesn't have safety valves for encryption devices or viruses or anything that the government uses. It's outdated stuff. So you have to take all your precautions off of your computer. And it's a situation that we have not solved yet. But I'm trying to, at my age, I'm trying to learn what the kids do. At 3 years old, I can't even. If you need your television fixed, you go get a 3-year-old because they can do it.
I have a question.
Hi.
Your son I'm not sure if I got this, your son has to go through all these changes because of your offense? Or
No, it's his offense.
You gotta go through.
I've got to go through his, because he lives on our property.
Because of.
I have my house has my property has 2 houses on it, my house and his house. And because we're on we don't live in the same house, but they have the same parcel number, the government or the court system views that as one house. They don't view it as a separate residence. So everything that happens in his house has to happen in my house by the court's eyes.
According to the court.
It's even though he's completely separate and he doesn't have access, it's another technicality. So that we have to live like we are registrants.
But they have no right to search your house or.
We haven't had that. They say yes, though you haven't had that.
They have have to get they have to have a warrant to be able to do that. But they say,
And
yes, they
probable
can come in.
Probable cause, but he missed a chance to see his 97-year-old grandmother. She hung on until he got home, and the PL wouldn't let him go see her.
Oh.
She passed a couple of weeks ago, but her last breath, she was waiting for him to get out. And that's an awful thing to do to family. There would have been no reason for him to go at least put his arm around her and everything. And it's unfortunately, it's not my family, it's everybody's family. And we just have to hold on.
So you gotta be careful, you gotta be careful that you can't live with family because of things like that?
Yes, you can't invite your family over for dinner if anybody's under the age of 18.
Oh, really?
Because that's a stipulation of the parole, not of court, of parole.
Probation.
Probation, I'm sorry. I'm saying parole, but I'm meaning probation. I apologize.
But when he's off of probation, if he gets off of probation, then, or
I
if
believe-
they're off of parole, I mean, probation is, you don't go to prison, right?
Right.
But parole is when you're in prison and they let you out before your time.
Right, he served his time, but they still, when they release him, it's still,
He's federal supervision.
it's supervised release. The names are all the same there.
So if you're on probation and parole is when you gotta be more aware of those laws.
True.
When you're off of.
Sometimes you.
Then you're off of them, I'm not sure, I'm assuming, but I haven't got that far yet.
And that's in 7 years, and that's a long ways off.
There's one thing about my probation is over with, but when I was on probation, one of my conditions was stay away from children. How broad a condition is
How can you
that?
even do that? You
There's
can't even
some
walk
things- Does that
outside.
mean I can't walk on the sidewalk? I can't go to a mall? I can't go to a movie theater?
They
I
call it
can't-
an incident. If you walk by a child,
Yeah.
you had an incident, and you're supposed to call your PO, your parole officer, and tell them you had an incident. Well, what does that even mean?
But it's like if my probation officer sees me walking on the same street with a child, that's like by definition I'm close to a child. You know what I mean? It's just it's such a broad
It's
condition,
hard.
and they have conditions like this, and it's almost like it's their a way to bust you.
That's what their threat is. That's what their threat is. And you just have to, I tell them, you just have to live squeaky clean. You just have to, you have to be thankful you're not in prison. And you got 7 years to deal with this. And I watch out for him. We spend all of our time watching out for him to make sure we don't mess up and we don't accidentally invite somebody over. And everybody that comes to our home, they can't have drugs in the car, they can't have a gun in the car, they can't have, not that they would, but you have to know and you have to talk about it. And it's a hard thing to talk about. Thank you.